All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the 150th installment of the Eric Jr. podcast. Believe it or not, we are still trucking right along.
Yes.
Before we even get into anything tonight, Chris Lynch, how does it feel to have done 150 episodes of a podcast that almost no one is listening to?
Well, it's an accomplishment. I don't know if it's a proud accomplishment, but I've enjoyed doing this podcast with you guys. I'm glad we're still doing it, and to reach 150 episodes, yeah, I think that's a legitimate accomplishment.
I think a couple people won the money on the over because
Yes.
the odds were pretty great at like 12 and a half. And here we are, a couple years later, still plenty to talk about with these Philadelphia sports teams. And we have an Eagles eulogy to get to. We've got some trade talk that's starting to percolate, starting to rise to the surface with the NBA and with our Sixers. We got to start tonight with the Birds.
Yeah.
Let me just say, big picture-wise, the Birds were very entertaining this year.
Sure.
And bottom line, you tune into sports usually
Yeah.
as a distraction to entertain, to invest energy. And overall, I'm proud of what they were able to do against a very mediocre schedule, and
Yes.
thankful that I had content
Yes.
each week and stories and relevancy. So I just wanted to say that off the top. I think the first thing we need to get to is the playoff game. Why don't you take me through what it was like watching the game and your reactions to the result?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, super disappointed, just like everybody else. You go in, you get your hopes up. You know, we had basically 2 weeks of like build up because we rested our starters in week 18. So it was really the culmination of a couple of weeks of excitement and energy about the team. To come out flat like that and to get, pretty easily handled by the Bucks is super disappointing. We saw a lot of the same issues from earlier in the year crop up again. The problems with the defense having against elite quarterbacks, the problem with, the offense moving the ball against a stacked unit, a solid unit defensive front like the Bucks. So those issues, they come up again, and they add a lot of questions to the offseason. But one thing that shouldn't be questioned is what you said before, like making the playoffs despite all the caveats, still, legitimate achievement this year. And I'm still, overall feeling positive on the year.
Yeah, and having said what I said, for the entire team to come out flat in that game, I mean, it was every phase of the game. It seemed like it was every position.
Yeah.
Obviously, a horrendous game from Jalen Hurts, like one of his worst, right up there with the Giants game. But on both sides of the ball, the defense did adjust.
Yeah.
They give up 17 points, and then there's 3 straight third down sacks. So when you look at, these games, and obviously what the result is going to be, there's still value in watching them. And with a guy like Jonathan Gannon, even though we've been very frustrated with him this year, in the biggest moment on the biggest stage, national primetime, at least not getting completely embarrassed at 17-0, you gave the offense a chance.
Yeah.
It was completely on that side of the ball that the entire game fell apart. There are certain performances that are just inexcusable, even though everybody was lackluster, including the officiating, some ticky-tack calls against the Eagles that really hurt us. But, I mean, we cannot complain about that with how some other teams lost this week.
That's true. I think your point about the defense adjusting and keeping the game, you don't want to say in reach, but respectable for a period of time. We saw what happened on Saturday when a team couldn't do that. The game snowballed out of control and ended up being one of the best offensive games of in the playoffs.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. I felt very much that it was the offense letting the defense down. I know they gave up 31 points, but a couple of those after you give up the 17-0.
The Barnett roughing the passing,
Yes,
roughing the passer penalty, and the Jason Kelsey holding on a big chunk play gain.
Yes.
The first play of the game, they get Fletcher Cox. It's like
Yeah.
it was from the beginning.
Yes. But the defense did adjust and kept it relatively respectable. The short field's working against them, and that's why they give the points. But the offense, just inability to get anything going. I think Jalen Hurts had like 17 yards at halftime. It was super frustrating to watch them just run into straight line, and then the safety's crouching so shallow into the box, sometimes at the line of scrimmage, and either Jalen Hurts or Sirianni, for the first quarter at least, refusing to look down the field. Everything was at or slightly beyond the line of scrimmage.
Lateral or completely dink and dunk,
Yes.
like you mentioned. Nothing developing to even threaten the defense. And to further your point, all 4 of the Eagles' first quarter drives, on the first play, it was a run. Every single time.
Yeah.
When we talk about the defense adapting, the inflexible nature of Nick Sirianni's play calling in that first quarter and in that first half really doomed the team from the beginning. So, again, we always try to glean we always try to look for positives, even when it's a result that we know is going to happen. And one of the positives from this game, and really the whole season, I thought were the rookies. Devontae Smith clearly needed to get the ball more, but his holistic view of his season and his production is really impressive, and I can't wait to pair him with somebody who can take some of the pressure off of him. On the other side of the ball, I really like what I saw with Milton Williams this year, and that was a kind of a controversial pick there in the 3rd round. Landon Dickerson, you have not heard his name called, meaning he's not getting flagged, meaning he's not giving up a lot of sacks, you would think. Zach McPherson's still a project. Kenny Gainwell gave him a little bit of juice throughout the season, had several touchdowns. I mean, that was a big takeaway I had. I tried to look for positives. There's a lot of question marks. One thing I'm not questioning are the picks that we took last year.
Yeah, it's been a pretty decent draft class for Howie Roseman. It's first year, still early. We don't know how some of these guys are going to develop or turn out. But like you said, Dickerson and Smith both look like hits. And then, the production you got out of Milton Williams in spots this year is encouraging. And Gainwell, like you said, has given you real production from the running back spot. So, we've bashed Howie in the past so often for his inability to draft, but this year it seems like he got most of it right. And I think most Eagles fans are okay with the recent return.
Yeah, I mean, I'm ready to parlay that into a larger conversation about the guys on the opposite end age-wise on this team. Unless you have anything to say about this playoff game and just the bad taste it leaves in your mouth and the fact that Tom Brady's overrated.
Yeah, no, nothing to add.
Okay, fantastic. So I do want to pivot here, slight pivot. We're going to look at the guys who were around during the most memorable moment of this organization, the Super Bowl. And we're talking about Jason Kelsey, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Brandon Brooks.
Yeah.
These are just staples of like this Eagles, like you think of the organization, you think of their faces, of their production, of their performances. And these guys all have question marks coming into the next season. There's going to be plenty of time to talk about Jalen Hurts. There's going to be plenty of time to talk about these 3 picks that we have in the upcoming draft. But right now, it's just a moment of reflection about these guys. What do their futures hold?
Yeah, and like you said, all of them pretty murky for one reason or another. I know Kelsey has been contemplating retirement for a couple of seasons now. Does he really want to go back into another year where they're still kind of building something? It's not quite the ready-made product. You don't really have the chance for glory that they may have. And does he want to go to another team? That's a whole nother conversation. And then Brandon Brooks, had the injury issues. Is probably going to get cut this year, or at least have to restructure that contract. So what that would look like is still unknown. And Fletcher Cox's production has been pretty underwhelming this year, I think would be the fair term. For the contract that he has, you wonder if Howie doesn't try to move on from him as well. So that's a huge core, and not to mention Brandon Graham coming off the injury.
Heart and soul of the team.
I mean, absolutely. You lost him for the year. It really felt it. It felt like you were missing a family member this year, watching the games with, because he was just such a constant presence for the Eagles over the last decade. But all those guys, Fletcher Cox, like those were they all played a massive, massive role in the Super Bowl run. And just the fact that, we already lost Ertz earlier in the year to the trade. Losing those guys more and more, it just sinks in how long it's been since the Super Bowl. And, you got to cherish those memories when you get them.
Absolutely. Well put. And just, prediction-wise, I could see Fletcher Cox coming back if they can't move him for something decent. I see Brandon Graham probably coming back. I got a weird feeling. I think Jason Kelsey and Brandon Brooks are probably not on the team next year.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of the team's identity. It's a big part of like skills that they can rely on, like as a team, schematically, organizationally, from a draft perspective. So it's going to be different seeing them roll out next year. But I was grateful to have all those guys, other than a couple of them, through this home stretch.
Yeah.
I mean, and Lane Johnson, to mention as well, like he's done really well for us after coming back, and that's another guy from that same Super Bowl team. So the faces are going to change in a big way next year, and this is kind of their last. It could be their last farewell tour.
Yeah, not mentioned Rodney McLeod, future in doubt. Those guys that are aging out a little bit don't exactly fit the profile of the team right now. You got to wonder how much sentiment is going to be carried in those situations.
Right. In a way, we've taken those positions somewhat for granted.
Sure.
Only because they've been filling out the roster where it's like, yes, they were a much younger team this year, but to still have those guys, there's a certain bit of institutional knowledge, trust, etc. So just wanted to shout those guys out.
And key positions, like all of them, like you think of center, right tackle, edge rusher, you haven't had thought about that position in a while. It's going to be tough to see some of these guys go, but as the new iteration of the team gets going, new guys replace old. That's kind of just the life cycle of a football fan.
Certainly. Yeah, and they do have the ammunition to make some pretty big noise and fill out several holes or make a very big splash.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to that with due time. Big picture-wise, these Eagles, they were relevant this year.
Yes.
And, like, as a football fan, when your team's out of it, we've talked about it in the past, out of it early in the season, it just sucks. Because you still want to sit down and watch the game on Sunday, and if it doesn't matter for anything, that's tough.
Yeah.
You still watch because you're a fan, but after the debacle of the Philadelphia 76ers playoff exit last year, I went deep into the 2021 NFL draft to the 2021 NFL Eagles, and they were really, really fun to follow.
Yeah.
So shout out to the Eagles, and the future's looking pretty bright.
Yeah, I agree totally. You want to move on to some Sixers?
Look, 10 minutes on the Birds. We are ready to move off of them. I'm ready to put them to bed. We've been talking about them a lot. Yes, I am ready to move on.
Okay. Well, the Sixers had a pretty big week. You lose that game to Charlotte. Ends the streak, ends the all that kind of talk. You come back, Boston and Miami back to back. You get those 2 wins, and honestly, I was flying. Those are 2 games that are always tough for any team. To have them back to back, Miami on the road, on the second end, that's just. You never think you win that game.
We never win those back-to-back. Miami and Boston, are you kidding me?
I mean, that's a schedule loss. You pencil that in at the start of the month. The fact that they were able to go down there and just, missing some key guys. Matisse wasn't there. Danny is still dealing with some back stuff. Shake is seemingly away
somewhere
from
else.
The team. Yeah. I know he's dealing with some back stuff, so...
They've been stepping up, man.
Yeah.
And in a way, when you have those longer streaks, then it's like everybody's almost pressing more.
Yeah.
But, I guess I shouldn't say that because that means that they're still winning. The Charlotte loss was instructive. And for them to bounce back and beat Boston and Miami, granted they come up, small. It was 3 games in 4 nights by the time they played the Wizards on Monday. So
yes. And it looked like they had just played 3 games in 4 nights.
Absolutely.
Traveling, 2 nights. I've always felt like it always seems like the third game in that 3 or 4 is the hardest, even though because your adrenaline is still running from the night before on the second game. So it feels like once you come all the way down, it's tough to rev back up. And it was a matinee game. So that, a lot of factors working against the Sixers yesterday in the loss to Washington. We're not really going to talk about that because we don't think it matters. I don't think it was indicative of any larger thing.
No, yeah. And in fact, the Sixers right now, contrary to popular belief, are very much right in the mix of it.
Yes.
They are right in the mix. The Eastern Conference is topsy-turvy this year. It's a new look, okay? Not a lot of people are ready for it.
No, they're not.
They're looking up at the Chicago Bulls saying, it's not the 1990s. What is happening out there? And I'll tell you what. The trade talk is starting to heat up a little bit.
Yes.
Joel Embiid looks like a legitimate MVP. It seems like things could all be out in the open here. They could make no moves. They could make a huge move. They could go for it completely, or they could say, we're just not good enough. Kevin Durant is now out for 4 to 6 weeks.
Yes.
The East is wide the F open.
That's true.
So where does that leave you as a fan consuming this team, watching what Joel Embiid is doing every night?
Yeah, I think we want to start with Embiid because he's really been just like so great. And it's, we have the numbers here, 27 per game, 10.5 rebounds, 4.2 assists. That's up from 2.8 last year. Getting over a steal and a block a game, posting these great shooting numbers, 38 from 3, 48 from the field. You look at those and they don't do justice because it doesn't show you the impact that he's having on the defensive end. Without Ben Simmons, he is now shouldering incredible burden, both defensively and offensively. And you look at what a team like this is doing, and you get goosebumps watching him.
His transformation on both sides with what he's already showed you as a player. You got to this year, you say, I kind of know Joel Embiid. I know about the fadeaway. I know about the touch around the rim. I know about the free throws. I kind of know the story. And what he did this year is come out and say, no, I still have more to offer. I still have more to develop and improve on the margins. His ball handling this year, I feel like that's been revelatory of sorts because this team desperately needs it, and he's just saying, I'll do it myself. And he's probably better at being able to initiate the offense than everybody except for Tyrese Maxey.
Yeah, no, and he's shown that over the year, and it's come when the Sixers have needed it. Anytime they need something right now, they're going to Joe, and he is providing it. He's being the closer at the end. He's being bringing the ball up, stopping a streak or something. It's gotten to the point where you start to have to consider MVP considerations again. Obviously, you had the big run last year. Once he started off the year kind of cold, and the COVID knocked him out for a few games. We didn't think that was particularly possible, but I think it's definitely creeping up again. After averaging 30, 10, and 5 since the new year, he's playing basketball better than I think anybody else on the planet right now. With Curry struggling, Durant's out, Giannis is still Giannis, but I think you take what Embiid is doing on both ends right now for a team that's so, just so clunky, missing its second best player, or at least the roster spot, right? It's just an empty roster spot. What he's doing it doesn't get enough credit.
Yeah, and we'll continue to do our duty on our platform, which is to heap praise on him every opportunity we get each week.
Yes.
However, what he's doing, you talk about the MVP award. MVP award is a narrative award. People love a story. And as much as Steph was exciting people earlier in the year, I don't think a lot of people want to vote for MVP for him again.
No.
I don't think a lot of people want to vote for Giannis for MVP. Kevin Durant just went down with an injury. It is a narrative award. And if this Sixers team remains this competitive with a huge Ben Simmons size hole plaguing them in several departments, not being replaced with something suboptimal, not being replaced with something mediocre, being replaced with nothing.
Literally nothing. He's just taking up space.
You talk narrative and you look at where the Sixers team is, and I think it's ridiculous. Last year it is what it was with Jokic. This year it is inexcusable to not have him now leading the charge of this debate moving forward if he continues to put up these numbers.
Yeah. Jokic deserves a shout just because of the numbers
he
he's
deserves nothing after his MVP last year. You got your MVP, buddy. Congratulations. Oh, my God.
They are not.
Yeah, he throws nice passes. I get it, dude. Embiid does everything else better.
All right, we're not.
All right,
I didn't.
You want to get me all riled up?
I didn't want to rile you
You
up.
want to shout him out.
I just wanted to acknowledge that he's in
we
the
don't
conversation.
acknowledge him.
Okay. I was going to say is their team isn't very good. They're not. They're hovering around 500, whereas Embiid Sixers are, shotgunning up the standings right now.
Sure, and your guy, has done that in the past with his team, and I think that helped his cause previously. So if it's going to help his cause, it better damn help Embiid's cause.
Yeah, MVP is wide open, much like the East. Now, do you want to talk about some trade stuff?
I think absolutely, yes. The answer to that question is yes. Let me just be very clear on that. And
always yes, 100%.
Where I was going with that is I think we're rounding the corner of the wild speculation. I think by the time next week rolls around and we have the next update about Ben Simmons' unwillingness to come back and that he would, make it as awkward and as horrific as possible.
Yeah.
It seems like there's starting to be some real traction to Daryl being talked into an asset package as opposed to the player package.
Yeah.
And by an asset package, are we talking 3 first-round picks from the Minnesota Timberwolves because they have nothing else to give? Are we talking De'Aaron Fox and ancillary stuff where you have a ball handler that's going to help Embiid and you still have assets for the future? The Detroit Pistons made the news today.
Yes.
Apparently we don't know how legitimate that is, but it's interesting that a team like that is dipping their toe into the Ben Simmons water, saying, "What do you think about something like this? Something a little, outside of the box." I imagine that with this Tobias talk as well, it's been enough now. I don't think it's just pure conjecture. I think that those are conversations that Daryl Morey is saying, if I have to pivot from my original stance with Ben Simmons, then Tobias is getting moved.
It's a possibility. It's definitely being discussed. I believe that you're right. There's been enough noise to think, okay, well, there's something there. We don't know the full story, but we don't know how far that adds in value to Daryl, or like what that would do to make a specific move happen. But there are now enough teams, like you said, dipping their toes in the Ben Simmons water to kind of. It's a good amount of suitors. It's about 4 or 5 teams, not including Portland. You're looking at Cleveland.
It's a team of the week.
You're looking at Cleveland. You're looking at the Kings. You're looking at the new Detroit Pistons.
They're the team of the week. The Atlanta Hawks were the team of the week last week.
And then the Atlanta Hawks last week.
Who knows who else could be interested?
I mean, quarter of the league, maybe. I don't know.
Can you imagine your boys' team, Denver, getting in the mix on something like this?
That would
dark horse team.
That would be truly wild if they did that. I'd be interested.
Are any of those, I guess, as we continue to talk trades, let me just get your general feel. Yeah. Which of these teams is either ready to deviate from what they've done historically, or which of these teams is feeling the burn from either an owner, a fan base, both, that they need to make a significant move?
Well, I've always thought that the most desperate teams are the Kings and the Hawks, because they are teams that desperately want to be in the playoffs and right now are not guaranteed a spot. If the playoffs started today, the Hawks would not even be in the play-in tournament,
which is pretty remarkable.
Yes, same with the Kings. They're, I think, in 12th place. Those are teams that feel like they need to be in the playoffs for slightly different reasons, with varying degrees of legitimacy. But they're the teams that are desperate. That's the team that's going to add the extra pick. That's going to take the extra contract. That's going to do what it takes to get this deal over the line. So I think those two have to be considered the favorites. If you want to touch on the Detroit package, I think it was the Athletic reported that you get Jeremy Grant, Sadiq Bey, Kelly Olynyk, and a first-round pick. That would be correct? Is that what I'm hearing? That's one of those trades that looks great on like NBA TradeMaker. Because it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of positive stuff.
Solid stuff.
It's solid stuff, but you look at Jeremy Grant. Not really. How much of an upgrade is he over Tobias Harris? His shooting numbers have dipped since last year's kind of highs. He's coming back down to earth a little bit.
He's the headliner, and you're saying that improvement is tangible, but not that significant.
Yeah, agreed. And then, because you have to get rid of Tobias, we already discussed that he's at best a neutral asset, at worst a -1. So you're not
clearly a negative.
So you're not getting anything for him. So you're just getting a slight upgrade at power forward.
Sure, but that leaves you with Tobias Harris on the roster, I think. So as we talk about that Detroit package, those are solid players. Always thought a stretch 5 could help us out. Haven't really had one ever.
We've never had
been
one
plagued by it
since
consistently.
Ilyasova, and it's honestly it's one of my regrets that I didn't champion that sooner, and it's got to be one of the Sixers front office one of the real disappointments of not getting a stretch 5 while Simmons and Embiid were playing.
Never having Simmons play with one could prove to be where we arrived at now.
Well, I guess
where it's just so detrimental.
Well, we should give Elton Brand credit. He did get a stretch 5. It was just Horford, and he paid him $80 million.
All right, now that's been reminded, so everybody can just relax a little bit. But no, dude.
Back to the Detroit package. Sadiq Bey, is a good prospect. I don't know
An athletic 6'7" wing. Sure.
He's not. He's fine. He's not better than Halliburton. I would say he's a.
How much better is he than Matisse Thybulle? Because what he lacks on the defensive end, even though he has the size, he's not necessarily making up for with the shooting numbers. So,
he can score. He's definitely a functioning offensive player.
How much better is he than Josh Jackson?
He's definitely better than Josh. I think he's a legitimate role player on a good team.
Okay.
But I don't know how much better he's going to be.
You're getting a role-playing stretch 5, you're getting a role-playing 3-and-D guy, and then you're getting a slightly above role-playing athletic 4 in Jeremy Grant.
Yeah.
And then the first-round pick that, even if it's unprotected,
yeah.
I mean, that would only be ammunition and something, other than that. And the Detroit package is just like you said, the theme or the thing that we should take away from it is this is a lot of solid stuff.
Sure.
And that's been contrary to what Daryl Morey said he'll accept.
Exactly.
Therefore, the whole crux of this conversation, has he moved off of that stance? Because otherwise, we are wasting everybody's time, and maybe Daryl Morey's the one drumming up these types of rumors with all this solid stuff and picks, so that way someone else says, well, if they're willing to give up all that, solid stuff, maybe I should give up one of our big 2, one of our big 3 that actually has a lot of value.
Yeah, and you're right. It seems like this is the exact kind of move Daryl Morey would not want.
Rejected.
Yeah, he's rejected.
Several times.
Yeah, pretty clear. And I remember stuff in the offseason about, the Pistons trying to make a Grant for Simmons deal, and Daryl just wouldn't have it. So kind of no point. They don't have anything else really other than Cade Cunningham, who they're not going to trade. That's of particular value. So I think we need to move off Detroit as legitimate. But the fact that they want him, maybe it's a 3-team trade where another team is getting something. Maybe your boy Jokic, his team. Maybe Denver, they get Grant back. They give up something and they get other stuff, and then Simmons makes his way to Detroit. Mm-hmm. Who knows? What I want to kind of just round out is the fact that there are multiple suitors willing to make legitimate offers is a positive. For someone who's their confidence level in Ben Simmons being traded is dwindling down by the second. Literally by every second, I'm less confident that Ben Simmons is going to be traded. That's encouraging to hear, the fact that there are multiple suitors. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, that's all right. I mean, bottom line, you've identified those teams that you think are the most desperate. And I think the key is it will be initiated. It will only get done if that third team jumps in and says, we are willing to overpay slightly to make this thing go through.
Yeah.
You look at Sabonis on Indiana.
Yeah.
You look at other players on other teams that aren't the lead star guys, but teams that need some type of shakeup. Those should be the teams working maybe even harder than the Sixers right now to get involved in this deal to help facilitate it. Because you're right, there's going to be several moving parts. Does Daryl reconsider this deal if it's 2 or 3 picks coming back to us somehow, even if those are far-off picks, protect picks, whatever? For some reason, GMs, organizations, if you're going to trade for their star player and they're saying we got 3 or 4 first-round picks plus somebody else, it just sounds better for them. And maybe those pick packages, if it's, again, over the current market value, then maybe that's when he finally, on February 10th, says, we're going to get 2 firsts plus 2 really good guys plus maybe another first. Then I think I might have to do it. But right now, it's just not enough. It's just not enough of the solid stuff.
I agree. And we haven't really there's been no big name guy that's seemingly available.
Other than Sabonis. That is it. And Grant.
Yeah, and
2 guys that just don't fit the bill here.
No. So, and I think after last night or last afternoon, we can kind of, for whatever reason, I think we can put to bed Bradley Beal ever playing for the Sixers.
I never want to hear that again. I never want to hear that sentence or insinuation.
For some reason, he just doesn't like the Sixers.
No.
Maybe it was the playoff series last year, but it seems like it was before that. Because I don't think we did anything.
No.
I mean, there was we have to mention, there was the popcorn throwing incident where a Sixers fan dumped popcorn on Russell Westbrook at the game after he had hurt himself and not hurt. I shouldn't say that. He got hurt.
Yeah.
And he was exiting in the fourth quarter, and a fan.
You're right to call that out. I think it might have also been against.
But it feels like it predated that. It feels like his animosity, because I do think it is legitimate animosity. Every time he plays here, it seems like he has a chip on his shoulder.
It also does seem like the guy who gave the double middle fingers to Russ, also in a Sixers jersey, didn't hurt that as well. But you're right, man. That has existed.
For some reason, he doesn't like us. He's not gonna resign. He's not gonna sign here.
I'm trying not to make this like a parody, but like, come on, like they just don't like us. We're Philadelphia, and they just don't like us. Dame doesn't like us. Beal doesn't like us. Nobody likes us. Maybe James Harden will in a couple months if we don't trade Ben.
Maybe.
How about that?
He's the one.
That's the closest one we get. Somebody will maybe kind of like us. A guy that's probably already past his prime already. That's the best we can hope for.
Well, that's true, and that's just realistic, and that's why the cap space arguments for like trading Tobias in a nothing deal, like that's where those fall apart. It's like, what are you gonna do with cap space? You remember last time you had cap space? Did you enjoy that process when we gave $80 million to Al Horford? What about the previous time before that when we had cap space when we gave Elton Brand a max contract?
You're really triggering me right now.
We don't
know how to spend our money, okay?
Players just don't want to come here.
And players don't want to come here. So we spend the money the wrong ways, and it's their fault, and it's not ours. And that's what I believe.
Yeah, maybe. Anyway, this has been just a long walk to say that while the Ben Simmons trade is, I think it's like 50-50 right now. I really do. It feels like it's on a whatever day you're.
Yeah.
Because some people seem to think that it's likely to happen.
I think momentum is building. I think a lot of people said maybe like 75-25. That has certainly jumped up to 50-50 coin flip if a team is willing to overpay, like we've said. Yeah. It is definitely the momentum is
Teams
building.
haven't stopped asking, which is encouraging, given Daryl's pretty rigid negotiating tactics.
Yeah.
Being pretty adversary. Yeah.
Let me just throw this at you then. If Ben Simmons does not get traded.
Yes. Real possibility, yeah.
We are dealing with, is it going to be a big storyline? Can we just continue to ignore him? We've been ignoring him pretty well recently, I would say.
Yeah.
After the deadline, it would be just
We've been doing pretty good for the last month and a half.
It would be just like the beginning of the season where it's it's going to be a week of holy shit, they're actually doing this.
Yeah.
And then it'll probably pass over, but I don't want to go through that, man.
I think if the Sixers just keep him away and it's fine.
Nobody asks about his money.
Nobody asks,
no public interviews by him or anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Stays quiet.
And that's the deal. That's the deal that has to be made between the Sixers and
the fact that the NBA doesn't have anything to say in this situation. The fact that Adam Silver was that's between a player and the team. It's what are we doing, man? This is somehow the stories just continue to be allowed to exist without any intervention and just steadfast commitment on both sides.
Yep.
And it's just been pretty remarkable to just see. Okay, it hasn't changed.
Nope.
And yet there has been no sign that it will definitively.
No.
Only rumors.
Only rumors. And that's just what we have to live with for the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll tell you right now, the Ben Simmons trade will be quite the podcast. It'll be very cathartic.
You're going to want to download that one first.
I mean, there's going to be plenty of pods to get to, so we understand. You're going to have to download us in relation to all the professional ones.
But your third or fourth pod,
yeah, they're saying the same stuff.
Yeah, we'd be a great third or fourth pod.
I want you to consider this as a selling point 33 minutes into this podcast that when Ben Simmons gets traded, you should come around our way. It's going to be a good time. It's going to be fun. There's going to be guests probably that want to chime in.
Yes.
So I strongly encourage you to consider us for the Ben Simmons trade. and if he doesn't get traded, I guess don't bother coming back because we are not going to be able to say anything different from everybody else.
Yeah, the first podcast after the trade deadline, if he doesn't get moved, that's going to be a tough one.
I don't know. We're going to have to take the week off. I'll tell you right now. That might be too much to even come here and talk into this microphone.
We might have a week off that week. Scheduled vacation. We got a dentist thing. Yeah. That'll be tough. Yeah. I don't even want to talk about it because
each week we get closer.
It's likely, and I just want to deal with it when I have to deal with it. I want to push it off as long as possible.
Man, the build up to that week, I'll tell you what. February, not a lot going on. Yeah, there's a Super Bowl, but you got the trade
I might take
deadline,
the whole week off.
February 10th.
I might take the whole week off. I might have to just
nice little
lock myself in my room or something.
What a nice little entertainment sprinkle with no sports other than the Super Bowl in February. Nothing really to look forward to. The trade deadline, February 10th. Tune in.
Yeah, I think last year the trade deadline was while I was taking a final, and it was the most stressful experience because the phone kept buzzing, but I couldn't look at it because I was and this was stay at home. It was COVID.
Yeah.
So I was taking the thing on my laptop and just the buzz, Woj Shams. I had Stein. I think I had Hayes on.
You were all
alerts.
Up in there, man.
Yeah, I mean, I had to be. And then just after I was done, just scrolling through the 45 tweets that had just been sent. That was a pretty eventful time.
Well, we'll see if this year can channel that type of madness, if you will. You want to talk about these Sixers anymore before we try to sneak out of here?
Well, I feel Maxey getting back. Seeing just looking forward for the next couple weeks. I think Maxey's continued progression, see if he can maintain this hot shooting streak that he's been on. That is something I'm definitely watching. And then just the guys getting back. Matisse took that nasty fall, and he'll be reevaluated in a week. That's obviously frustrating. Danny Green's been out. Getting those guys back and seeing what the rotation kind of rounds into. We've gotten some good minutes from Charlie Brown Jr. We should give him a shout out. He was instrumental, I think, in that Miami game.
The athleticism jumps off the court into my living room when I'm watching with this team.
Are you sure that's not just the forced perspective of having to watch George Niang and
Dude,
Tobias Harris?
You better stop bad talking. Let me tell you something. Yeah, I got something to say. George Niang is untradeable. I do not care. Him and Maxey, they are untradeable. His basketball IQ, his quick trigger from three, his shit talking to any and everybody who will listen or engage with him.
Yeah.
He's my favorite. He is my favorite player on this team other than Joel Embiid. How about that?
I mean,
I love George Niang.
That's a strong statement.
He embodies everything I want from that four position, honestly. Yeah. Just maybe if he had slightly quicker feet, but hey, now we're nitpicking.
It feels like we're really not nitpicking, but if you say so. I'm not a George Niang hater. I mean, he's
untradeable.
Great. He's not untradeable. No one's untradeable except for Embiid.
Not even Tyrese Maxey.
Maxey is untradeable at the deadline, yeah.
Untradeable at the deadline. Interesting caveat there. Interesting.
Well, if a superstar is available in the summer, he's obviously available.
Well, I think people are starting to dig their feet in when it comes to the Tyrese Maxey untradeable take.
We'll unpack that at the time. Right now, he's untradeable.
Untradeable at the deadline. Mid-season untradeable Tyrese Maxey.
Yeah.
Put that on your news feed there. Flashing across your screen. Breaking news. Tyrese Maxey untradeable at this year's trade deadline.
Yes. And George Niang is available for any and all offers.
For many offers.
I'll throw him into a Simmons trade. I don't care.
He is not a throw-in. He's what's making the deal go through. The other team is demanding him or they won't do the deal. That is not a throw-in.
I'm okay with that. If it gets the deal done, I'm okay with giving up George Niang.
Okay, listen. Then that's all I have on these Philadelphia 76ers. Let's see how they come back next week. They fared pretty well the past 7 days, so let's hope that they keep that up.
Yeah.
Listen, I gave you my spiel about the Ben Simmons talk. I truly hope that you come back. I want to thank everybody for listening and making it this far into the podcast. Have a great night, everybody. Bye.